I don't know that much about cybersecurity because I'm not an expert at this, but let me tell you what I've been doing for about 30-odd years. I've been exploring the world in all climates, in all conditions, in all situations that push us to resorting to extreme resources. But these conditions may happen at any time. We don't know what may happen in the next hour, in the next minute, in the next second. It could be a storm, it could be a polar bear, it could be suddenly an area that is devastated by a tsunami. And we also focus on climate tragedies, disasters, tsunamis, earthquakes, major migrations due to war or climate conditions. Now, for some years now, I have been working with my research institute on human skills to adjust to these new situations, these new lifestyle conditions, which happen very fast or sometimes much more slowly. We work in many different ways. Sometimes we resort to simulations. I spent 40 days in a cave without any digital technological tools, no watch, so the opposite of what we do here, to see what the brain does when put in an anomic situation, very different to what we experience on a daily basis. So we also work on crisis situations, which means we can work on risk assessment and see how we address these risks before, while, and after they have happened. And it can be a number of risks. This is a beautiful field in sub-Saharan Africa, and 15 years later, it became a desert. Questions arise: how can human beings survive in such conditions and find solutions in order to face these new conditions? So these conditions have taken us to trying to defining risk and change. And in human history, there are three main reasons prompted human beings to change. When human beings were faced with challenges they could hardly handle, well, you have climate change, pollution, a number of things that we talk about right now. There are social or society changes. There used to be 15% of the population living in cities in the year 1900. Now it's more than 50%, and so we have gone through society changes. And then there are technological changes that can totally upset societies. You know, the digital technologies are omnipresent right now. So, but for the first time in what we know about human history, for the first time, all these changes are taking place at the same time, which means that we are faced with massive number of risks and changing conditions, which lead to some kind of disorientation for us. We're talking about security, we're talking about cybersecurity, about risk. So how do we secure systems in which human beings are submitted to incredible constraints, and sometimes the human brain hits a limit, and so we consider that the mental load is more and more present and creates more and more disorientation. We see the number of people in a situation of stress, PTSD, we have burnout, depression, because we have reached the limit in the amount of mental load we can survive to. And so how can we all survive? How can we all experience this in conditions where we are pushed to our limits? So we need to wonder about the human brain and its ability to face these situations. To understand what's coming next, I'll be talking about human beings a little more, and then we connect this to the cyber world. This avalanche happened happened yesterday in Chimborazo, and the people who were in the base camp were killed. You hear this new piece of news and then you forget about it, but you remember that. Imagine on this camp there was your brother or your sister, and there's an avalanche taking the same happening in the same place, and this upsets your whole life. I'm not trying to scare you about avalanches, but I just want you to understand that a human being can only be impacted by a situation only if it affects its close surroundings, its company, a person's company, a person's family, a person's emotions. All human systems are based on emotional sensitivity. All the decisions we make, which are based on reflection, are actually motivated by our emotions. And you need to understand it makes a potential difference with IT systems, which are rather cold systems, and that usually go for something very simple. A human being, when faced with a new situation, will look for indicators. With their brain, they will try to find information and will try to select the right signal that will lead them to the solution. So they know a lot of things, they find a lot of things, and finally find a solution. And this is the way we program. There might be some self-learning systems, artificial intelligence, but the way we program system, an IT system, we make them in the same way find a solution when faced with a question. The problem with genuine crisis is that these indicators are no longer there because it's a new situation. It was never entered, never parametered, never set up. So we need to move forward in the unknown. It's uncharted territory. And this is where you find the potential difference between the human possibility to project themselves into the future to solve problems. And we're not always very good at this. Imagine in the 1500s when Magellan went to see the King of Spain and said, I need ships to go beyond what we've already explored. And the King of Portugal said, Sir, it's useless because we know everything about everything. We've discovered everything, and there's nothing left to discover. That was in the 1500s. He was told, we know already. And this is the issue, when we try to scope our risk system. We think we know things, but however, we're always faced with something we don't know. And Magellan went to see the King of Spain and was given ships, and he discovered the Pacific. So, he explored the Pacific, And so whenever you think about setting up new systems, when you talk about innovation, always go through the concept of imagination, the ability to consider that we don't know everything. As I was walking around the FIC, I met a lot of people who think they knew. And I think it's one of the perils in cybersecurity. You think you know when you should imagine what you don't know, which means you need to look at diversity. You need to be open, and this cognitive diversity requires a lot of energy, but it is essential in order to find new ways to operate. And at the end of the day, the way we'll innovate in the future, we'll set up our future systems, goes through two simple equations. Digital innovation, the way we will be using our wonderful systems we are creating and using more or less in a correct way, have to open up to new territories to help mankind. Hacking, the way these systems are attacked is very similar to this. Anyone who attacks a digital system needs to find a new way to do it, to open new territories while trying to put the human brains they're facing in an uncomfortable situation. So we want to go further while preventing others to move forward and trying to disorient them. So we try to try and make them unstable, unsure, so we can take control of these people's systems. So when we think about this, maybe we should think about the connection or the lack of connection between the digital world, because the cyber world, and us. And I think that, I'm pretty sure you agree with me, but sometimes we may forget when we are creating something, because when we create something and set up new things, we are focused on needs. We look at what is needed in order to solve a problem while forgetting the rest. It is important to remember that digital technologies, whatever they are, digital technology should always remain at the service of the living, and not the other way around. Digital technologies, IT systems, protection, security, all this is to protect the living, to make sure we can continue living the way we live. While create machines, secure them, if in the end the living don't matter or doesn't matter. And so this out-of-time mission that worked on our cognitive needs demonstrated something pretty simple. That is not that simple to understand. Any acceleration has an impact on the environment and on people. There's no way you can move faster without having some kind of impact. And more, we want to go faster, we want to solve problems, we want to compute faster, and we put human and cognitive systems in a very incredible way. They are mobilized in a very incredible way. And you have, therefore, mental fatigue, you have a number of IT people are facing difficulties at some point, because how far can we accelerate? Because once we are already in overcharge, we submitted to an overload, mental overload. Well, accelerating is about having better machines that provide better services and that therefore are better, and therefore we take away some of the load from humans. Maybe it's not true for people who are over 40 here, but it must be true for most people. Do you really think that with all the technology we have nowadays, we have more time as human beings than in the 60s? Let me tell you, we don't. All studies are demonstrating this. The more solutions we have to solve a problem, the faster things go and the more time we actually waste. So it means that we're going to need to think about the quantity of systems we want to put into place with a very simple reflection. Instead of putting chips everywhere, IT systems, control systems everywhere, how far can we go? In the 1960s, my car could not be hacked. It could be stolen. Now I have 100 chips in my car. I don't own a car, but those who own a car, they have more than 100 chips. And the question you should ask yourselves, and I'm being very honest about it, and I'm not questioning your jobs at all, but is this useful? How useful is this? Every time I think about adding a chip somewhere, is it useful? Because every time I have an impact on the environment and on human beings, and I create an extra vulnerability, because no system, however good, is not hackable. Is not hackable, sorry. And so sometimes the best way to create cybersecurity is not to create a system. And maybe one of the tasks you can carry out in cybersecurity is to say, well, there are great advisors that can wonder about the benefit-risk ratio. Some people are thinking about adding chips to human brains. We're not there yet, but we're not that far either. It's been tested on animals, and the real question is,
Est-ce utile?
Is this useful?
Puisqu'il y a un syllogisme absolu,
Because there's a
qui est que
syllogism.
plus nous voulons
The
aider
more we
l'humain
want
par
to
un
help
système
human
informatique,
beings
moins
with
il a de
IT
têtes
systems, the
et
less
plus il
time
est sous pression.
they have and the more pressure they are
La puce dans le
submitted
cerveau va
to.
peut-être aider le cerveau, mais elle va
Yeah,
pas
the
aller
tip in the brain
plus
might
loin. Donc la
help
question, c'est
brains,
jusqu'où
but
doit-on aller
it won't
et
go
comment
much
nous pouvons
further. So the
réfléchir
question is
aujourd'hui
whether it's
la
useful
cybersécurité,
and how can we
non
look
plus
at
toujours
cybersecurity
sur je protège
not
un système que j'ai créé,
under the angle of
et
a
peut-être
system
parfois
you've created,
sans
but
revenir
and
évidemment
sometimes and
à
not
la bougie,
necessarily
comme un célèbre président l'a
meaning
dit il y a pas très longtemps.
that we need to go back to
Comment
using
parfois
candles,
réfléchir
but
différemment à
can
la
we
sécurité en
look
n'ayant
at
pas à sécuriser un
cybersecurity
système
from a
qui a été
different
créé.
angle by not creating a
Aujourd'hui, cette
system?
question se pose.
That's
Parce que
the
nous avons
question.
trop d'éléments à
Because
protéger.
there are too many things
Et pas
that
assez
need
d'humains pour le
protection, and we don't have enough
Et pas
human
assez de
beings
cerveau
to
pour
do
le
that,
faire.
and not enough brains
C'est
to
donc
do
un vrai
so.
défi.
So it is a definite
de se
challenge
reposer la question
to
de ce
ask
à quoi
ourselves the
sert
question:
fondamentalement
how
la sécurité
useful
et
is
l'informatique et l'ensemble du
security
digital qui
and
est un vrai défi
IT?
parce que les choses
It's
vont
a real
vite,
challenge because
très
things
vite.
go
Vous le savez
fast.
mieux que
You
personne.
know this
Vous
more
êtes là
than
pour protéger des
anyone
systèmes et vous
else.
savez que
You're here to
s'il
protect
faut protéger,
systems,
c'est
but
qu'il y
you
a
know
toujours des
that if
personnes
they
capables
need to be
d'attaquer.
protected, it means
Et
there are
les
always
notions
people
de
who will
liberté
attack
aujourd'hui,
them. And the
d'émotion,
notions of freedom, of
diversité,
emotions, of
sont de plus en plus
diversity
oubliées dans
are
les
more and
langages
more
et dans les
forgotten
perceptions que nous avons de notre monde
in
et
our
des systèmes qui
perception
sont
of
censés
the
le
world
protéger.
and the systems that are supposed to
Vous
protect
connaissez
it.
tous Shanghai,
You
la
all know
smart
Shanghai,
cities la plus évoluée du
the
monde, qui a
most
été élue,
evolved, most
smart city la plus
sophisticated
évoluée
smart
du
city in
monde.
the world.
C'est super, hein.
It's
Ils
great.
vont très vite, ils ont plein de choses.
They
Ils ont un
go
système de contrôle
fast.
des
They
habitants
have
fabuleux.
amazing
Et puis la
control
Covid est
systems
arrivée.
of the population, and
Et
then
ce système qui était
the
jusque-là
COVID
fait
crisis happened, and these
plus ou moins
systems
aider
who
la
were meant
population
to help the
est
population
devenu un système de contrôle absolu.
became an
C'est la ville
absolute
du monde
con-
qui a contrôlé
control
chaque
system,
pas de
and
ses
they were controlling
de ses
every
habitants
step
pendant 2 ans
every
et qu'ils le font encore
inhabitants
aujourd'hui.
were taking for
On est
2
capable de tout
years.
savoir, de tout contrôler.
They know
Et donc, il
everything,
va falloir
and they
redonner
control
peut-être
everything.
un vrai sens
So maybe we should try
la
to find a
cybersécurité.
real meaning, a new meaning
Non
to
pas seulement pour
cybersecurity,
sécuriser des
not
systèmes,
just to
ce que vous êtes
secure
capable de faire
systems,
avec,
which is
beaucoup
what
de
you're
talent.
able to do
Et
with
je
great
suis impressionné d'ailleurs.
talent, and I'm very
Ces quelques
impressed,
minutes,
just
abasourdi
walking
par la
around
quantité de génies,
these
et de
the
conceptions qu'il y a dans
booths.
cette salle.
I was amazed by the amount of
Mais sans
genius
oublier
and
que
intelligence
tout cela
that was concentrated in
faire
just one place.
une
But
seule
all
raison.
this can only be done for a
Protéger
simple reason:
la liberté,
to protect people's freedom, rights,
protéger notre diversité.
people's liberties, people's
Et bizarrement,
diversity, and
constate de plus en
strangely
plus
enough,
que les intelligences
we
artificielles
have been
sont aussi
observing
racistes que
that
certains humains.
artificial intelligence may be as racist
Protéger
as
les
some
émotions.
human beings.
Parce que sans
Protecting
émotion,
emotions, we need to
aucune
protect
décision.
emotions, because without
et sans
emotions,
décision,
there are
il y
no
a imagination.
decisions, and
Et
without
sans
decisions,
imagination,
there's no
demain,
imagination, and without
il n'y aura plus rien à
imagination,
protéger.
in the future, there will be nothing to
Je vous remercie de m'avoir
protect.
écouté.
Thank you very much.
Taking my